All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are live and welcome to yet another video edition of Let's Talk America with host Shana Thornton. Of course, I'm Shana, your on air host and executive producer of our national award winning program. And welcome, welcome, welcome. We are in August. We took a brief hiatus to get some R&R, rest and relaxation. But the summer has concluded, at least for those that are moms and dads out there. But technically, summer is still going, and we're still producing and presenting some amazing and very relevant topics for you. And we thank you for being with us. You know what I always say, you can be anywhere in the world, but you're with us on this Sunday night. And tonight's topic is one that I think many people can certainly identify with and understand. We are talking about the G word of grief. Grief. And most individuals have certainly experienced it in some shape, form, or fashion. And tonight I have two amazing experts that know a lot about it professionally and also personally. I want to introduce you all first to a very important guest of mine tonight. It's a world debut for her to be on this show, but she is no stranger, of course, to being on air. What a wonderful personality. I had the amazing opportunity to meet her professionally a few months ago, and she just awed me. And I realized she had a book and she has expertise on so many areas of interest. I'm talking about the one and only Dr. Kiana Shamsi Dean. I hope I got that right, Doctor. She's a professional social worker. She is an amazing wife, a community member, a mother, a businesswoman as well. So much. And I will say thank you for also being an advocate, watching your platform and all that you're doing. And we've got two guests tonight, everybody, which is super special for us. We have a tradition on this show where we allow our dynamic guests to 2 minutes or less introduce themselves. And we're going to get to our second guest in a minute, who is no stranger to our show, of course. But Kiana, 2 minutes or less, tell us about yourself. I know your resume, I know your CV, I've seen the bio, it's impressive. But as an advocate, a community advocate, why is it so important for you to really talk about a topic that's so difficult for a lot of us, that being grief?
Yes, first of all, thank you for having me. I'm super excited to be here, and I'm super excited to just be on this platform to have these types of conversations that I think we're not having. I will say, as you already said, I'm Dr. Kiana Shamsuddin, and I am a social worker at heart. I've been working in child welfare for probably 15 years now, and then mine kind of moved into this space of social entrepreneurship. And the reason why this topic is so important for me, because as you're going to learn, this is a personal journey for me as I lost my daughter. But one of the things that I've learned in this journey is that we have not been in this opportunity, we haven't had the opportunity to create these safe spaces to really talk about these vulnerable experiences, or just being allowed to be vulnerable or being allowed to be fragile. And this experience allowed me to really kind of first understand that I needed that safe space myself and be able to articulate that, because I don't think we've been in this space where we're allowed to kind of articulate what it is that we need and the fact that we want to be vulnerable. But I also want to be a part of creating that catalyst, or being that catalyst that kind of cultivates these different areas and promote that amongst our community, amongst our women, amongst our men, that we need those safe spaces to be vulnerable and fragile. And so that's I guess that's in a nutshell my 2 minutes, why I'm where I am and why I am here today.
Thank you so much. What a powerful testimony. And thank you for being honest and sincere about it's a topic that a lot of people don't feel comfortable with. And I love, Kiana, that you're saying it's something we need to talk about, because often what I have realized as a journalist and podcaster now, if we confront it or not, it doesn't go away.
Mhm.
And that we still have to deal with it. And such an important conversation for all communities, but especially our minority community, as we deal with emotional and mental dynamics that affect everybody. We can't ignore it. And I think you would agree, and also our second guest, to be the best version of ourselves, we have to face the hard truth, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah.
And I will tell you, that's not something that we're taught to do.
No.
We're taught to hide it, shield it, protect it,
Mhm.
put it away, because most people don't know how to deal with it either. So it's kind of like the elephant in the room. Everybody experiences it, but nobody knows exactly how to handle it.
No. And tonight we're going to cover some important solution tips, if you will, on coping with it effective. Ladies and gentlemen, you heard her voice just now. It's a one and only, a friend of this show, family therapist Karen King out of Atlanta Metropolitan, and so is Kiana out of Atlanta Metropolitan. So I do want to give a shout out to our Atlanta viewers out there. We do seek featured guests from all over the world, but Atlanta is a very special place in my heart, of course. So Karen King, an award-winning family therapist, you've been with us talking about so many issues that affect all communities. The minority community is a passion of this show, as you know. You
Mhm.
just opened up with the powerful words of we're not taught to do it, and it's comfortable to stay hidden. The next 2 minutes or less, why is it important for you to be with us tonight and talk about grief, as Kiana already shared?
Because in my experience with working with people, we've all experienced grief to some degree. And like I said earlier, we don't know how to process it or deal with it. So it shows up in different behaviors or attitudes in our relationships with the people that we love. And nobody's really understanding what's going on and everybody's lashing out. So if there's no healing, if we don't understand how to process and work through what we're dealing with, then our relationships are just as toxic as our insides are. And so, for me as a family therapist, looking at the history of what has been passed down, what's been taught, it brings me great joy to know that when somebody walks through these doors, that I will have tools for them to use so that they can be in the power seat in their lives and not their emotions.
Wow. I mean, what a powerful point to bring up, right? That we have to really be present and show up for ourselves, Karen.
Mhm.
Not easy, but certainly something that can be attainable. Well, ladies and gentlemen, you are watching the award winning Let's Talk America with host Shana Thornton tonight on this Sunday, August 10th. We're talking about grief. It is a topic that I did want to cover. I wanted to cover for a while now and thought the timing, you never quite can get it right, but had the opportunity to meet Miss Kiana recently, and I thought the time was right. Speaking of Kiana, she's written a book. She is a professional social worker. But Kiana, right now, for the next few minutes, I do want you to share your experience with us, be as transparent as possible, because as a journalist, I believe that when you share, we all are inspired, we're all motivated, and we get educated on the different topics that at some point in our life, Kiana and Karen, that we may experience or someone we love will
Mhm.
experience. And I happen to believe, I think both of you ladies know that education, knowledge is key. And we only get that through sharing. A quick shout out to all of our viewers already on. You're busy. This is your platform. Kiana's going to speak. Karen's going to speak. Get your questions in. So many of you have said, if I had the opportunity to have a professional social worker in front of me, if I had the opportunity to have a family therapist in front of me, I'd ask them this, I'd ask them that. You have the opportunity to do that right now virtually with Let's Talk America Radio Podcast. Get your questions in. Ask the questions for your cousin, your neighbor, your coworker, yourself, or just general information. That is key. Quick shout out, Kiana, before you join us and share some important information. Miss CC Ford said, hello, everyone. Thank you for being with us, Miss Ford out of Atlanta. Trina out of Atlanta Metro said, good evening. We also have with us Shana Amore, and she said, hello, ladies. We have Glenn on with us from South Atlanta Metro. He said, good evening, all. Trina said, share. Thank you so much. Yolanda Brown, thank you, out of Atlanta Metro, said, good evening, everyone. Rosalind Rawls out of Atlanta Metro said, hello. Atlanta's in the house tonight.
Yep,
We
yep.
also have Mr. Devlin Cleveland saying, awesome. Thank you, sir, for being with us out of Atlanta Metro as well. Exceptional transitions. I don't have your geography location, but you said hello, and we say hello back to
Yes.
you. Howdy, if you will. And I also have a Anna K. Hamilton. I hope I said that right. And she said, good evening, ladies. So thank you, everyone. Get the questions and comments in, okay? Thank you for joining us and share this episode. Kiana, you have an amazing book that's out. Tell us your experience.
All right. So I actually have two books that I released. I released my first book called Naya Shining Star. It was released last year. And the book was inspired, if I was to give it any type of a classification, I would say it was a children's book autobiography in a sense, right? Naya Shining Star was based off of the loss of my daughter. I had my daughter in 2017. Her name was Naya Iman Shamsuddin, and she
Mhm.
was diagnosed in utero with hyperplastic left heart syndrome. We found out at about 20 weeks. And what that means is that the left side of her heart was not developing at the time, which means that once she was born, she would not live outside of my womb. So we
Mm.
had to, of course, carry that for the 9 months that we had to carry her, knowing that once she was born and once she left my womb, then she would no longer be here. And the time was telling. So in that, she lived for 3 days. And we lost her on May 5th, 2017. And so Naya Shining Star, why it's so important is I actually wrote that, and people didn't realize when I wrote it, but I wrote it literally 7 years ago. And this happened 7 years
Mm.
ago, about give or take 8 years ago. And I wrote it on a computer, just typing and typing, because at that time, it was a year later, I had my son. And my son, Micah, was born on the day that she passed a year later. And that inspired me to write something, because I just felt like there was something, it wasn't done. I wasn't satisfied with this idea that she lived and then she was no longer here. Her name was Naya, and Naya means purpose, right? And I firmly, firmly, firmly believed that there was a purpose for her life. I firmly, firmly believed that there was something that needed to be done. And then the birth of my son, for me, I'm a believer, so I can't speak to everybody, but I'm a believer, and I did not believe in coincidences. That was divine. It was absolutely divine. He was born on the day she passed. And I make a joke about it where I say that Big G and her, that's what I call God, Big G and her got together and said, what you're not going to do this year is be in this grieving space. I got something for you. And he was actually due May 23rd. So that's how I'm like, yeah, maybe a day or two off, but he wasn't even due until 2 weeks later, right? So that really inspired me to say, how do I continue to keep her legacy? How do I continue to keep that connection to them? And for especially for him, because there's a divine connection between the two of them, how do I continue to tell that story? And so I wrote this story, really holding on to it, keeping it protected myself. Probably now I realize, because I wasn't ready to tell the story. And I was very protective of me more so than I was of her. I didn't want the criticism. I didn't want the questions. I wasn't ready for those questions quite yet. And it wasn't until he was born that I got the story out. And then I met someone 7 years later and my husband, who actually reminded me that I had written the story. What are you going to do with it? That it was time to go ahead and do it. And I wanted to test whether or not I was ready. So the first book came out as my test of like, okay, tell the story. Let's just get it out there. Now that it's done, the healing can actually begin. And that led to a second book as well, which is Naya's Enchanted Garden, that came out July 31st of this year, which Naya Shining Star was the beginning of that process of starting the healing. It was giving Naya voice. And Naya's Enchanted Garden is moving from pain to purpose, which is now the legacy.
Yeah. I love that. I
Mm.
love that it appears to me certainly as a journey of grief. And I want to thank you, one, for your transparency, because it's beautiful to witness. And I've interviewed a lot of people in my career, and people are at different stages at different times. And when you said something, I think everyone says experienced grief of whatever type, right? We have different experiences, but most people, adults, have some sort of grief. When you said you weren't ready to answer those questions, right? Such a vulnerable statement when I hear that, because I think there are people who certainly mean well when they're talking with us about any experience we've gone through, and they're sort of hesitant. Do I ask? I don't know. But then there's a part of me who I've lost people I love very much as well, where it's like, but sometimes to certain people not acknowledging it or bringing it up, it can come across to some as if it didn't occur. And I think everyone is different, right? You two are experts. You worked with people from different backgrounds with different situations that happen, but such vulnerable information that you shared, Kiana. And thank you so much for that. I'm going to move to Karen, but before I do, Kiana, you were obviously blessed also as well with your beautiful daughter and another child, your son. Do you have any, and this usually is an end of segment question, but I have to ask you now because I think it's fitting. Do you have any pearls of wisdom, if you will, for someone else that's out there, because that's the beauty of humanity, that we share so many experiences. A mother, a father, a grandmother, a grandfather, right? Because I think one of the most important things when I sat down years ago for this show with an expert on grief, a grief counselor, she said, everyone grieves different. And that's the thing that a lot of people don't realize, that you think, well, we were both mother and father, we were both grandparents, but often the relationship and the dynamic is different. And she said that people do certainly have to give grace to that part of it, which I thought was powerful. But any words of wisdom or anything in your heart that you would share with someone right now who is in a tough spot, who with grieving the loss of someone they love, or the loss of a relationship or something that is dear and near to their heart?
My biggest thing will be to give them space to be. And that's for those who are supporting, and that's for those who are going through. I think one of the things, if I'm speaking from just my personal experience, there was this heavy, heavy, heavy expectation for me to be strong at a time that I didn't want to be. And that expectation not only was received from those on the outside, but it also was something that I also ended up putting on myself. Like, I have to be this because there's this expectation. Like, when people come to me and they're asking me, how are you doing? Because I didn't really tell everybody. I had a physical manifestation of being pregnant, right? So I'm pregnant, but I know what's going to happen. I know that, and some people know about it. And the only reason why I was able to tell certain people is because I didn't want to have to answer it later and say, hey, don't get too excited. And I knew those people were going to be excited and want to come and do rooms and want to do baby showers. So I got ahead of it and say, hey, this is what's happening, right? But then there were other people that, I didn't feel the need to give that information to. But I will say, even in that process, I had to be, and I didn't have to be, but I felt the responsibility to be protective of other people's feelings, when I should have been the one who got to just be in whatever those feelings are, whether it's up, whether it's down, whether it's whatever. So my biggest thing that I would say to the individual is to be okay just being, whatever that is, whatever that feeling is, whatever that vulnerability is. And for those who are supporting them, to just be present. You don't have to have the right thing to say. You don't have to have the right gift. You don't have to. Presence is the biggest thing that helped the journey for me. And if I had that, the space to just be was healing enough for me.
Wow, I love that. The space to be was healing enough for you. I love that. Powerful, a powerful takeaway for this segment already, and we're not even halfway there. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, you are watching Let's Talk America radio podcast. We're talking about the G word of grief. If you live long enough, you will experience it in some shape or form. As experiences happen with us, we have Kiana on with us, and she is certainly sharing some very good information for us. Karen, right now, I want to turn my sights to you as I ask an important question for people that are healing with grief. What is a great point to start with? I don't think we can. Hold on. Okay, there you go, Karen. We can hear you. Yeah,
Okay.
take it
Okay.
away.
So I was saying that healing is not linear. It's not a straight line. It's not A to Z. You may have A to R, back to B, over to Q, and then back to C. Just taking your time and allowing yourself to go through the different stages. So you have denial, you have anger, you have bargaining, you have depression, and acceptance. And they can come in any form. There is no, okay, I was angry today, so the next phase is bargaining. It doesn't work like that. You are an individual, you are made special and unique, and your grieving process is going to be just the same. It's not going to look like somebody else's journey. Um, and as Kiana said earlier, taking the time for yourself. Okay. Your physical body has to heal, your emotions are involved. A lot of your, like the neurology, you feel the weight in your body, just resting. All of these things are vitally important to keep in the front of your mind, and not in the emotions, but in the front of the mind. That's where the thinking and the planning goes, right? And so just remembering that your process is your process. No one else can tell you how to grieve, how long to grieve, where to grieve, any of that. You tuning into yourself, listening to your body, and making sure that you are doing the basic necessities for what needs to happen, like eating, drinking, bathing, keeping things simple, not being too complex with it.
I love that. I mean, because so much of it is coping and getting through it all. I've lost very uh, dear people near and dear to my heart. The woman that was a mother to me, people that I love, a sibling, and it is very hard. And I think when people get there, if you will, sometimes you're wondering how you're going to get through. And Karen, great tip of saying get through, still take care of yourself, to certainly get there. I have to ask this, Karen, as you are a family therapist that deal with people that certainly have experienced or experiencing depression. When
Mhm.
you think of people losing ones they love, to me, it's automatic that some shape of depression will occur. Is that what we would call, if you will, situational depression? I've had therapists and psychiatrists on this show that certainly say that, have said in the past that there are some things that are to be expected. In one, do you agree with that? And two, is it helpful for one to say that's what they're experiencing, that's what they're going through as they deal with the healing and coping?
It really depends on the person. So if someone needs to have a label to understand what they're going through, yes. But if someone is
Mhm.
okay with just dealing with the symptoms of what they have going on, then that's what that would be. Um, and as far as like if I'm working with someone who is grieving and I see some depressive symptoms showing up for them, a diagnosis I will give them is an adjustment disorder with mixed feelings of depression. And so what that does is it allows room for us to do the work to put the supports in place without having a diagnosis that will follow them um, post this season of healing and recovery.
Okay. Okay. Which goes into some of the experts that have joined the show in the past who have said it's situational, and as they
Correct.
deal with it, people will exit out of that. And is it safe to say for both ladies that most people do come out of somewhat of the depression, if you will, anxiety, whatever could have been triggered by the situation? Most people do come out of it without professional help. Kiana, first I'll put that spotlight on you as a social worker.
Um, I feel like it's not a black and white answer.
Okay.
And the reason why I say that is because it depends. So there are certain factors that I think we need to acknowledge because you just don't know the dynamic of the relationships. Also, and I think Karen will agree, you might have some trauma that might be associated with that loss. So it really depends on the dynamic of the relationship, what was experienced in relationship, before you can just say it's a either or situation. I hope that makes sense.
It did. It did. I think so. You're saying it's not necessarily an absolute. It depends on the situation. And Karen, is it safe to say, to piggyback on what Kiana said, and ladies and gentlemen, we are talking about grief. If someone already has existing concerns, existing anxiety, existing depression, existing, we're talking about things a little different now, going down the spectrum, personality disorders, could they experience something certainly considered a tragedy, a little more different, if you will, from someone that has not or is not currently experiencing depression or extreme anxiety? Is that a fair question?
Um, I would have to kind of piggyback off of what Kiana just said. It really depends on the temperament of the person and the
Okay.
historical life that they've already lived.
Okay.
Right. So it could be somebody who has a mental health diagnosis, who's been medicated, who's had supports in place already. So they would definitely experience grief differently than someone who does not have a diagnosis, who has not had supports. So it really just varies, right? Like healing is not linear. Impact on people is not either. It's not a direct answer. It's not like, okay, this person, two-parent household, they may be sad or depressed for 2 days. You can't diagnose it like that.
That's it. Correct. Yeah, that's fair. But I think it's certainly fair, ladies, which you both concur, that when it's all said and done, to give yourself time to heal for whatever has occurred. There's no
Absolutely.
timetable to it. And I'm gonna be bold enough to say this, and there's no timetable, but with time, if you don't think your coping mechanism, and prayerfully it's a healthy coping mechanism, right? Because unfortunately we do know sometimes people can do things that are not the healthiest for them as they cope through that. I've certainly witnessed some individuals do that. That you're saying, I am coping, I am doing this in a healthy manner. I don't want to say get better, because as someone who's lost their mother, I'm not sure it's something you ever get over. I say that myself, speaking from my own personal experience. But the coping mechanism um, that exists, that are available to us, certainly help. But is it fair to say, one, it's good to be sure you're doing it in a healthy manner? And what I mean by that, Kiana and Karen, you're not drinking your blues away. You're not certainly turning to illegal substances or drugs. You're not harming yourself. You're not taking it out on your significant other, partner, or husband or wife. Is that fair to say, Kiana, that we're gauging ourselves, self-evaluating, as Karen sort of opened up with her piece, that we're being healthy and taking care of ourselves?
Absolutely. I think all of that is very, very much important. As she mentioned before, when she mentioned earlier, it depends on just the individual, and it depends on, where you are, as far as just your psyche, if you want to put a word to it. And as was mentioned, many people process grief differently.
Yeah.
And again, there are historical factors that do take part in that. But if you do have some sense of self-awareness, I do think that
Mhm.
that is a huge foundation to how you
Yes.
move forward in your journey with grief.
Yeah, such a powerful point. Karen and Kiana, we have individuals that are on here commenting. Just a friendly reminder to everyone that we want your questions in as well. And I do want to give acknowledgments to those who are watching us. We have, and I hope I'm pronouncing your name right, Kiana Griffin. Has said, "Good evening, ladies. Shout out to my cousin Karen." So, Karen, your family's on supporting us. Kiana, I hope I'm pronouncing this right. Kiana Bailey said, "Hello from New York." Thank you, New York, one of my favorite cities in the entire world. Thank you for watching us. Miss Neat Robinson out of Atlanta Metro said, "Good evening." We also have prayer hands, and I think this person was saying amen to comments both of you made. That's Shana Amore out of Atlanta Metro. Neat Robinson again said, "Good evening." Also, Kiana Bailey, hopefully I'm pronouncing your first name right, said, "Good evening, ladies. Shout out to my amazing bestie." All right, Dr. Kiana. She said, "Keep sharing yours and your baby story. The world needs it." So true. We echo that, Miss Bailey. Thank you for that. Chutney Burden out of Atlanta, out of Jonesboro, specifically said, "Good evening, ladies." We also have Shauna said, "I love this. Tell the story, Kiana. Let the healing begin for all of us." Thank you so much. And I do believe, Kiana, with you being so transparent with your journey and your experience, you're likely helping someone right now that is going through that at a beginning, middle, or whatever stage they're in. Really self-reflect and look at some things. And it doesn't mean everybody's going to want to share their story publicly, but I think when we share our stories, we can help individuals cope and get through. Because I don't know about you ladies, but sometimes when you've experienced some things, you wondered how you got through, and it's from the stories and inspiration and motivation of others. Stacy out of Atlanta Metro, thank you, Stacy, out of Rhode Island, originally said, "Good evening, ladies." We also have Cassandra out of Atlanta Metro said, "I love to hear that healing is not linear." I love that. Thank you for reinforcing that tagline. We have individuals watching from all over. Thank you. We see those checking in for sure. Mr. Curtis Tarber said he is watching. Kiana Griffin said, "I love this." Kimberly Underdew, who is a social worker herself, said, "Hello, everyone." Thank you so much. Everyone, make sure you're getting your questions in. Questions, comments. If you've got a question about grief, any emotional concerns, you've got a family therapist and a professional social worker in. Tyronica Carter said out of Atlanta Metro, "Good afternoon. We have a question for Miss Kiana Griffin." She said, "Question. My mom has never grieved the loss of her husband, and now it has evolved into a deeper situation, dementia, which was probably there already. How can I help my mother through this process?" Um, Karen, I'm going to give that one to you, and we're going to also have Kiana acknowledge that. But what a relevant question that I think a lot of individuals of Generation X. Kiana, not quite sure what age you are. You look super young, but I know Karen and I are proud Xers in the house. And Kiana,
Me
you're likely
too.
younger.
Me too.
Well, you're
Yes, I am.
no offense to the millennials and the baby boomers and the great generation. We're here for y'all too. And the Z's and the Alpha. Shout out to our children's generation. But the Xers are, as we see our parents who are baby boomers, most of them, of course, experiencing the aging process. Some memory loss can come with that. Karen, we've talked about that before on
Yes.
this show with changing family dynamics. She's talking about her mother not grieving
Mhm.
something properly. To me, it seems to go hand in hand with perhaps dementia or something being there. Your professional opinion.
What I would say is, if she already has this other diagnosis that's there, um, really being patient with her and understanding that things are not connecting in a manner that would be what she would consider as appropriate or normal for the situation. Um, if her cognition is declining, then almost set a caveat to the side to know that her behaviors and her responses are not going to meet what you think normal grieving or appropriate grieving would look like. And I would say too, don't take it personal, right? Mom has her process and then you have your process. Not saying don't worry about mom, but then turn the mirror back to you and making sure that you are meeting your emotional needs and not looking for a certain response out of mom because mom already has other things going on. Does that make sense what I'm saying?
It certainly does to me. And I do want to say, Kiana pointed out to us, she said she's a case manager and she's 48 years old. So she's in a Generation X category too. Thank you so much, Kiana. Let us know if that helped. I found it extremely useful and helpful. Kiana, and we obviously are talking about grief. I do want to address the question that's in the platform. In grief in general, being a social worker, obviously you have some experience with that on different levels, dealing with different individuals. This young lady is saying that the mother is not quite grieved it. And Karen brought up a point that she, with dementia, may not be at the point where that those answers or some of the healing process would be the same for someone that's 45 years old, right? Um, to those Generation Xers that are out there, something that's very relevant that we have people send messages in about, and not me speaking with individuals in the community, for those people that are grieving different types of situations and want answers, right? And it could have been Kiana childhood trauma. It could have been a situation, a tragic situation that happened to them. That sometimes I think there are people that are saying, I need an acknowledgement, I need a response, right? And because, and I too am a person of faith, it may not necessarily, if you will, come from God in the way they want it to. They're looking for the human in the flesh form to tell them
Mhm.
why was this allowed to happen to them, right? We've had so many stories shared with us here on this platform. What would be your professional take and advice to someone that may be 43 years old? I think that's millennial hitting age, but 45 or 50 years old, wanting some definitive answers, perhaps, and not that this is about the young lady that gave us this, but the people I've spoken with, where you and I likely know there may not be an absolute definitive answer coming. What would you suggest to them professionally?
Wow. That's a lot to really address. If I'm focusing on kind of using the example of the young lady, I feel like for those who are the us who are looking for a solution, I think we're trying to be solution focused in this situation, and there may not be one that we have the capacity to give to that situation. Then we might need to figure out how we put ourselves in position to process that we may not get the answers that we're able to get, right? And how what steps we need to do to process that for ourselves and to get some level of peace knowing that we may not get that resolve. And it's not because of anything that we didn't do or didn't do ahead of time, but it's really because there's another layer to it that we cannot address, that we can't fix. And so it makes that situation a little complicated in that process. And I focus on the individual who is bringing it forward. You know, how can we process that, and how can we get through that, and what's that journey that you need, or what is it that you need to get to that space of peace that you may not get the results that you are looking for.
Yeah. And what a great response and information, Kiana. And is it fair to say for you and Karen both that perhaps what we may think we need from other people, and I'm going to go here, Karen, even apologies, right? I
Mhm.
mean, there are things that have happened to people in their childhood, teen years, adulthood, where they want someone to apologize. They want perhaps mom to apologize
Yeah.
for what happened to them, likely maybe because of lack of supervision. Maybe there was someone that they didn't feel they prioritized their safety. All sorts of things you two know as a social worker and as a therapist happens to people. Um, how realistic here do they have to be that mom may not acknowledge that, or dad may not ever take the responsibility that he was not present as he should have been in 1987?
Yeah. It's a process, honestly. It really is. With a lot of the clients that I work with, um, I use this analogy of well, it's called the locus of control. And there's a big circle, and then there's a little dot in the middle. And what's in the little dot is actually what you think, what you feel, what you say, and what you do. It's what you can control. And the big circle are all the things that have happened to you, or that have been said to you that may not have been pleasant or helpful or whatever the case may be. And so the focus for that client would be staying in that little dot to control what's within my power, because there's no peace when you're outside of yourself. And if you're looking for somebody else to do a thing for you to then let go, or for you to walk in peace, or for you to go to the next level in your life, then it's really the thought process of my answer is outside of me that's the problem. So
Yeah.
it would be more work on. Go ahead, Kiana.
No, no, go ahead. I always want to make
So,
sure I add to that. Go ahead.
okay. Okay. So the work is truly keeping the focus on self, right? Because I'm looking for someone outside of me to meet my need.
Mhm.
And as Kiana said earlier, like I'm a believer as well. And my hierarchy goes God, self, and then others. So I'm looking to God first for what the missing piece is, so that I can then love myself without needing someone else to pour into me. And then that allows me to show up to love on other people and to release, to forgive, to let go, whatever the thing is that needs to happen for me.
Kiana, you had some comments?
Yes, I had two things as you were talking that popped up in my mind that has been one of the things that helps me get through. And these are some of the things that I also share with those of us who are dealing with different circumstances with our families. And
Mhm.
so I think that this also is very, very, it works with grief too, because sometimes you have to also, as you mentioned earlier, Shana, that it's not just loss that you're grieving. You also can be grieving the expectations
Yes.
that you have for relationships. That is also something you might have to grieve so
Mhm.
that you can move forward. And I say move forward versus moving on, because healing is not about it's not about moving on.
Yeah.
Because again, it's not linear. There's
Right.
no finish line when it comes to healing.
No.
It's about moving forward with what you've lost, which can also include jobs, families, marriages,
Mhm.
or just the real, or even come into a reality of what is. And as you're talking, I'm just thinking about sometimes these relationships, when you talk about parents and when you talk about like mothers, and maybe we have relationships with parents that we expected. I
Yes.
wanted you to be this for me, and then I'm going to therapy to deal with that situation of not having what I need, but I still have expectations as I'm learning these new therapy
That's right.
therapy keywords,
Yes.
as I'm now getting diagnoses. And sometimes we don't realize it, but sometimes we have clients who come into therapy so that they can therapize. Yes, I made that up. So we can go ahead and therapize the people in our family. But that's
Yes.
not what therapy is for. It is for
Correct.
you. And it
Yes.
goes back to this situation when you mentioned forgiveness, right?
Yeah.
People think forgiveness automatically means reconciliation.
Yeah. Yeah.
Forgiveness is not for the other person. People say this all the time, right? It is not for the other person.
Mhm.
Forgiveness is for you. So it
Mhm.
all goes together. Like it's literally about
That's
you and the
right.
work that you're doing for you. And what is it going to take for you to grieve the expectations that you have for someone that they don't have for
Right.
themselves?
That's
Yes.
right. That is so
Yes.
powerful.
That's it.
When you were speaking, Kiana, it's a reminder that grief can hit every area of our life.
Mhm.
Certainly, transitions, right, of death, but also the end of a marriage for some
Mhm.
people, the end of a relationship. And I'm going to go here because I once saw a teacher write this with a message that went out to the school, and it struck me. It said, regardless if your child doesn't meet the expectation you wanted, and I'm paraphrasing, but she
Mhm.
said, celebrate where they are in the garden of where they are. And
Yes.
and I thought that was so poignant because right when you talk about expectations, right? Some individuals that have the opportunities to be exposed to different things and they want their children to be the astronaut, right? To be the doctor, to be whatever, start their own business of plumbing. And I've had so many successful entrepreneurs tell me in private, I had to realize this was my dream and
Mhm.
not the dream of my children, right? And I think sometimes when we talk about legacy, Kiana, which is a buzzword you use, and I love it, but in America, we think the legacy means financial
Mhm.
money. We think it means a business, leaving the brick and mortar to them, leading the LLC name. And the
Mhm.
reality is, as entrepreneurs have told me, have done very well for themselves. It was my dream. It
Mhm.
was never my son's who was my namesake. He was like, I never asked for this. You did. And I think you're absolutely right. The expectation that we have for our children, we have to be practical sometimes and evolve with that. And what even if that's going to Paris for 6 years to be an artist that we may not think be practical, but it goes back to those expectations. I certainly love that. Great information. I want to say this to Karen and Kiana. I have unfortunately experienced the loss of my brother unexpectedly, and my father had to deal with that, and my brother's mother as well, and everybody grieves the loss of someone in different ways, right? He was my
Mhm.
brother, he was their son, but. One of the things that we all know that people will often say, and I'm sure you've heard it, that losing a child is the loneliest club in the world.
Mhm.
And my father has echoed this. Friends of mine that have lost children, it's something unbearable for people. Kiana and Karen, Kiana, I'm going to put the spotlight on you right now. This show is an important platform for you sharing your story and also information about your two amazing books. But for those people, and that saying is there in how people feel about it, but that's the saying they say the loneliest club in the world. How important is it to keep a village? How important is it for both of you, being professionals that you do, to join perhaps support groups or to have someone to talk to that may also know that experience? It may not be the experience of that person who's there, but it's some experience and some bonding, as they do for cancer support groups. I say that because there
Mhm.
are lots of different situations people go through, but how key is that now? And first for you, Kiana.
Well, first, let me say that in this process, especially now, more so than anything, because I think the book for me was a catalyst for healing, more
Right.
so than just a children's book. It became this vehicle for me to be able to bring storytelling as a form of healing for myself, and then maybe promote other people finding whatever their their catalyst is for healing. But in that process, I will say that I have now just been in this space of seeing how healing community is. So I absolutely believe in it was the village that got me to where I am right now,
Okay.
whether I realized it at the time or not.
Mhm.
Because at that time I didn't realize it. There were people who were around who allowed me to just be. There
Beautiful.
were my best friend came in here, she was the main one who was just
Beautiful.
calling, not to ask you how you doing, because sometimes I don't want to talk about that,
That's
just
right.
to keep you laughing and just keep the day going, right? Or to make sure I'm not on the floor, and if you're on the floor, I'm gonna lay down with you on the floor, but you're not allowed to stay here. So
Yeah.
some of that, what it's healing. I would absolutely tell everyone that community healing and community, and it's not to get into a whole historical, a conversation or a lecture, but blacks are communal.
Mhm.
We come from that. Our African history is they did everything communally. So if we think about it, really, it's ingrained in us to heal as a community.
Yeah.
It is ingrained in us. And if we can kind of tap back into that, I really feel like there's a lot of things that we can collectively kind of evolve from together. I think we've kind of gone into this silo, but that's a whole nother conversation of doing things in silo. But I need us to get back to understanding how powerful it is to heal in community. There's a book that we just recently read that's called Sisterhood Heals. It's powerful. It really speaks to that as far as just women healing together, and I can't say it enough. I just really firmly believe in community has played a huge part in why I am here
Beautiful.
right now, why I'm able to have this conversation, why I'm
Awesome.
able to be vulnerable, because I've had people around me who have made it safe for
Mhm.
me to be vulnerable. They've made it safe for me to be
Yeah.
fragile. I got to even give shout out to my husband. He's made it safe for me to be fragile and to be vulnerable and to be soft and not
Beautiful.
have an expectation for me to come out of that. And because of that,
Beautiful.
I feel free and I feel confident to create that for others. So I firmly believe in community is a huge pocket for healing.
Mhm.
I love that. Karen, as a family therapist for individuals going through things, and sometimes whatever grief we've been through, if it's a split of your best friend, they don't want to be your friend anymore. And I say that because certain
Yeah.
situations like that should not be watered down. I think
Right.
sometimes people dismiss that, but we don't have any right to dismiss people's feelings on it, especially if you've been friends with somebody for 40 years and they
Right.
abruptly stop being your friend. That's
Yeah.
a loss of something. But how important is it to have an identification with someone that knows what's that like? And perhaps, and I'm going to say this, I think we all have been there on either side, Karen and Kiana, where we're like, well, you're going to get through it, you're going to be fine. And you're like, well, you've never had pains of being pregnant. You've never had back pains or, swollen feet. And I know people mean well, and husbands do mean well, and others. But when they say those things, it's like, get through that cramp. It's like, but can you identify with that of being a woman and vice versa,
Mhm.
being a male and the expectations they have, right? I love being a boy mom, but I'm a daddy's girl growing up, but I can't tell a man what it's like to feel to be a man. I can't.
Mhm.
That's Shayna saying that.
Yeah.
Karen?
So what I would say as far as community is that my recommendation is to find, if you're not connected with a church group or something like that, there are some communities online that you can actually do virtually or go in person. I know one right off the top of my head is called Grief Share.
Okay.
And there are facilities all around the metro area. You can go to Grief Share, I think it's .org, and they'll
Okay.
let you know who is in your area that
Okay.
offers those classes. But community is vitally important. You think about, you're most vulnerable when you're isolated, when you're alone,
Yes.
right?
That's
But
right.
when you are in community, you get the words of encouragement. Like, it could just be a look across the room, and it's a
Correct.
connection that lets you know, hey, I see you, you're not alone. And I'm not here to fix you either. I'm just here to be in your space.
I love
Because that's
that.
huge when you're already going through.
Ladies, I recently saw some data that talked about being isolated and not being a part of community and engaged groups, be it a family unit, be it a church, be it a mosque, whatever it is, that they're saying that it can actually accelerate dementia. And I'm
Mhm.
paraphrasing the data, but I'm
Mhm.
saying how key it is when Kiana's talking about being community, being a part of it, when people don't do that and they're not a part of some sort of activity where they feel valued and a part of, they can honestly grow more distant with some other things they mentioned. Do you two certainly acknowledge that and from your professional opinion to be true?
Definitely. Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. The data is true about that.
Yeah. Troy Rochester said, hi, my sister. Not sure who he's giving a shout out to. Okay, there you go. Someone that knows Kiana. Kiana Griffin says, yes, extremely helpful, Karen. She's going back to your comment.
Mhm.
She says, I have taken on the responsibility of taking care of my mom just a few days ago. And so my entire life is currently changed.
Mhm.
And that was the right time for me. I hats off to you. I know as a caretaker, I've known many caretakers, that is a big responsibility responsibility. So thank you for your resilience there, Miss Griffin. Vicky out of Atlanta Metro said, what I have learned is that the people that hurt you may not be capable or understand or acknowledge the pain that they have caused you. So you have to work on your own healing because you may not get that apology.
Yeah.
Going back to what we mentioned later or earlier, Kiana, Miss Vicky, I think that's certainly true, right? Because one thing we know, you can't control others,
Right.
right? And that's the biggest disappointment in life that you will realize sooner than later. And no matter how much you may hurt, and no matter much how reasonable it may be to Shana, Kiana, and Karen, that doesn't mean that that first cousin that owes you an apology for what happened is willing to do it, right,
Mhm.
Kiana?
Absolutely. We said it already. Once again, forgiveness is about you. It doesn't necessarily mean reconciliation. And at the same time, you may not, I say this all the time, do not put expectations on people that they don't have for themselves. You'll be disappointed every time.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's key. I think so many times I will say this, Kiana and Karen, that but we live in a society, right? Let's go here. Let's real talk for real people, right? Karen, this question's for you. In certain communities, right? But that's
Mhm.
your mama.
Mhm.
That's your daddy. That's your
Mhm.
sister. Right. Sometimes to cope and deal with these individuals, you're tired, perhaps. And I'm saying this because there are many people I know that've gone through this, perhaps of the disrespect, perhaps of the dismissive behavior,
Mhm.
whatever it is. But we live in communities and villages where that's your mama no matter what, right? And that is the case. And by no means are we dismissing that, but that's your sister no matter what. But Karen, how much more for some people, the habitual dismissive behavior or abuse or volatile or unhealthy behavior must one tolerate in the name of that's your sister?
I will tell you this, Shayna, being able to separate the role or the title from the person helps.
Okay.
Okay. So that is mama, and mama may not be showing up as mama. Mama might be showing up as Linda. No disrespect to anybody named Linda if you're on here. Okay.
There's some wonderful lenders out there, I want to point
Yes,
out.
yes, yes. But what I'm saying is when we can separate the behavior from the title and look at the individual person, it creates a caveat of tolerance for a certain amount of time. So you're not showing up with the expectation of mom, who, when we think of mom, is doting, loving, supportive, encouraging, all the things.
Yeah,
But when you don't have that kind of mom, you got to look at mom for who she is
that's
as
right.
this individual. And then that protects your heart, it protects your psyche, it protects your mental, it protects your emotional well being. So you're not showing up at a situation expecting for mom to be
That's
there
right. That's
when
right.
she's not operating in the role of mom. She has the title mom.
That's correct. That is so true. Such a great point. I want to say this. I think we know, I say this definitively, people are flawed. We know that. And just because they're in your family does not mean necessarily that they're well intentioned. And I am just being real talk for real people, ladies, right? I think it's hopeful to believe that we'd like to believe that every member of our immediate and extended families, of fourth and sixth cousins, are wonderful, great people. But newsflash, ladies and gentlemen, from Let's Talk America Radio podcast, it's simply not true. And if you believe that everybody in your whole family bloodline is amazing, perhaps you only know four or five of them. That's just my professional and personal take. And so when you realize when you realize that that is reality, that you can't make people do right, you can't do that. I think you simply, for me, I said you meet them where they are, and and Kiana said it best. You manage some of that disappointment. Life will always have disappointments, right? I think as parents we recognize that you're not going to live a life disappointment free, but you manage some of those expectations, realizing if that person's already showed you, and this is Shayna's opinion, who they are, to think wishful thinking because at the holiday period we put mom, dad, or brother, or sister on it, that they're somehow going to be festive and everything's going to change. I just think it's not being practical and emotionally stable. Kiana, did I go too far? I'm not a social worker or therapist, but I went there.
No, I think you talked about it. I think the key word that we need to address it in those type of situations is boundaries.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, boundaries is self care. And
That's right.
so you can put those boundaries in place no matter who the relationship is with. And I think that that was the perfect example that Karen mentioned of separating the role from the person, right? I can still respect you as my mother, but I can also put boundaries in place for my peace.
That's right.
Yes.
That's
And
right.
my peace is
That's
my
right. That's
responsibility.
right.
Mm-hmm.
It's
That's right.
not for me to give
That's
to
right.
you. So and boundaries is very difficult for a lot of us,
Yeah.
Yeah.
especially in
Yes.
our community.
That's
It is
correct.
so difficult
Yeah.
because you are battling between one boundaries, but you're also battling between social norms.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of us are raised with the, respect your elders and
Yes.
respect
That's
your
right.
mama, respect your
That's right.
daddy, and our elders are doing the same to us. You're supposed to respect me no matter
Yes.
That's
what.
right.
So
That's right.
you're battling between what's a boundary and what's disrespect. And I think
That's
Mm-hmm.
that
right.
that's one of the things that we can actually work on as a community to define what
Beautiful.
those differences are, right?
Yeah.
And that could kind of help people navigate those relationships.
Yeah.
But
So
that might be another
powerful.
podcast.
Yeah, yeah, that's another segment. We're going to have both you ladies back on for. But what a powerful point, especially when you said it's on both ends. The
Mm-hmm.
elders have pushed that no matter what. And like I said earlier, no disrespect, but how many more that's your sister
Right.
are people expected to take?
Right.
And Karen, I know you'll say this as a therapy. If every time you see your sister at the holiday period or when it's a family reunion or get together, they need to book a session with you. Perhaps it's time to manage that time with sister. Am
Yes.
I right or wrong?
Yes. Absolutely right. Absolutely.
Peace of mind is key. Ladies, we're going to get ready to wrap it up. But I did want to say, Vicky said something that following up. She said, that's why it's good to turn your hurt until a testimony. Beautiful. To
Mm.
help someone else. My grandmother also told me that God will take you through something is always a testimony for someone else. Great point, Miss Vicky. She said also dismissive behavior from family members is very toxic to our Black community. And
Mhm.
she ended with amen. I think that's true. Both ladies have certainly echoed that dismissive behavior. It's neglecting. Am I right to say this, Karen? It's neglecting your own self care, your own
Absolutely.
mental peace when you're allowed, and you can't control other people. But if
Right.
people say that didn't happen, your feelings don't matter. I
Right.
have a right to do this because I'm your aunt and I'm your mom, and you're my child, and you're supposed to always do what I say, no matter what.
Mhm.
Even if you're an adult and you can recognize the wrong. And by no means, I do want to say, I can say this comfortably. None of us, Kiana, Shana, or Karen, are certainly advocating for anybody to be disrespectful.
Right.
But ladies, I'm going to say this, but I certainly would advocate for someone to take care of themselves, and
Mhm.
that being in every possible way: spiritual, physical, mental, and emotional.
Right.
And mama nor daddy get a pass to be neglectful, to get be abusive. That
Mhm.
that doesn't come. And certainly there's a respect that's there, but as Kiana said, there has to be a boundary
Yeah.
that's put up to. So what a powerful conversation tonight. We've got to echo this and do this again. If you're listening to us live on this Sunday night, or you're watching a replay, and by the way, this is going to be available 24 hours. If you're on Facebook, thank you to our YouTube family. We thank you as well. But share the episode, send it to someone else, tag them on this, and let them know that we're talking about a very real dynamic that will hit everyone at some point. Karen, I'm going to hit you first, and I'm going to go to Kiana as we wrap up. Two requests from you briefly as over the next minute.
Mhm.
What is the most important um, tip you would share with someone that's experiencing grief of any kind? If they are watching a father or mother they once knew to be one of the sharpest people mentally, and now they're 80 years old and they're seeing a drastic decline with perhaps mobility, mental capacity, memory, because that's a grief process as well, right? Grief
Yes.
is not always the transition of the body to death. It
Right.
can also be watching something slowly happen, watching a child have cancer,
Mhm.
watching your mother go through something. What's the best tip that you have? And also give us your contact information for those to reach out to you
Okay.
beyond this program.
I will do. Two things actually. The first one is what we've been reiterating, repeating all night. is take care of you. When you're on the plane, they tell you put your mask on first and then help the person next to you. So if you are a caregiver and that caregiver burnout is a real thing, I want to encourage the second point is to find community. SAMHSA, there are a couple of different mental health organizations out there that offer support groups for family members who are caring for members with mental diagnoses or with decline in health. So the first thing is to take care of yourself. The second thing is to find your community of support. Those are non negotiables. And to get in contact with me, um, tlctraumawork.com, TRAUMAWORK.com. Number is 404-446-0300.
I love it. Thank you so much, Karen, for that information. And so key. Take care of yourself. Great analogy with the airplane. That's true. You
Mhm.
can't be the best mother you can be, the best sister, the best brother, whoever, the best leader in your community, if
Right.
you cannot have yourself stable. And you've got to do that. Kiana, I'm going to pass that torch to you, young lady, as well. Figured out you're in the X Club. So thank you. Welcome.
I just realized that I think I'm not when you said 43 is millennial. So I'm actually
See,
millennial then.
wait, what? Wait. You're an honorary
Thought I
member.
was
You're an
X.
honorary member.
I can't keep up with the years. I thought I was X until you said 43 is not. I said,
And
oh
maybe we have to check that. I'll get the research on it. But
wow.
nevertheless, you're an honorary member if you're one or not.
I receive it.
But I want to thank you for sharing your own personal experience. So many hearts go out to you for all that you're doing and sharing your testimony. You don't have to, but you have, young lady. Your two books. Your latest one came out this year, and you're continuing the legacy of sharing something very, very important, which is your experience and your journey. And because of that, I'll say this: that your daughter lives on, and she always will because of that. So tell us the best tip to deal with grief of any kind that you would ever one or two, if you've got more than one per wisdom. And you said it at the top of the segment. I want to get to there, but anything else that can come to you to share, and also contact information with your two amazing books out. Take it away, Kiana.
Absolutely. So I would absolutely go back to what I said to give yourself the space to just be, honestly, and to find your village. Just echoing my sister Karen said, find your village that allows you to do that, that gives you the safe space to do that as well. And so those would be the biggest tips that I would say. I will also add that no matter what your grief story is, it matters. So
Mhm.
the biggest thing I want you to know is your story matters. It doesn't have to be out loud. You don't have to heal out loud, right? But your story should still matter to yourself before it matters to anybody else. So however you bring that story to life for yourself, even if you speak it to yourself, if you journal it to yourself, if you sing it to yourself, whichever, I need you to understand that your story matters.
Yeah.
And that's the first step to actually giving life to your healing, is to making it matter to you. So that'll be my first tips, my little tips to that. And I will say, if you all are interested in purchasing Naya's Shining Star or Naya's Enchanted Garden, you can visit my website at www.fempoweredstories.com. You can also find me at Fempowered Stories on Facebook as well, and you can reach me at Dr. QMS Dean, DEEN, on Instagram and all other platforms.
Thank you, Kiana. Thank you so much. Virtual clap to you and Karen both for being on with us. I will end the conversation with Vicky out of Atlanta saying, thank you, ladies. She really enjoyed this. Thank you so much, Vicky, for watching us, and to everyone else too. I'm Shana Thornton, the proud on-air host and grateful executive producer for our award-winning Let's Talk America with host Shana Thornton radio podcast program. We've been with you nearly a decade, and we're continuing to bring the conversations that matter to all communities, certainly. And that can be education, that can be your health, that can be any component of your life. And please don't ever watch the program and say, well, that doesn't apply to me, right? Because we've done shows on perimenopause and menopause and ovarian cancer, but someone you love may experience it. And I happen to believe that knowledge is powerful. I've seen it firsthand. So may you always stay connected to programming that's worth worthy. We think this program is worthy here. So stay with us. Let someone know if you were inspired or motivated tonight by any two of our guests, Kiana or Karen. Let others know. Don't keep this good information to yourself. And I happen to know my grandmother, who's one of my favorite people in the whole wide world, my father's mother, would always say, if you live long enough, you will experience something on this earth. And sometimes that is something that's unfortunate, but you can get through it. You are
Mhm.
resilient. You're tougher than you know. And I believe in you. And if someone hasn't told you this today, you are loved and you're amazing. And tomorrow will be a new day and a new opportunity. Push through. I promise you, it will all be all right. Thanks for watching us, okay? Send in feedback. Let us know if you want these guests back. We're going to have them back anyway because they were amazing. But keep in contact, keep connected with Let's Talk America Radio. Thank you, Shana, for saying goodnight, ladies. Excellent. Trina out of Atlanta Metro. She said, thank you, ladies, for a great discussion. Thank you, everyone. Let's Talk America offers real talk for real people because, after all, that's you. Stay with us, everyone. Have an amazing August. And we're going to be back on soon with more relevant talk. Take care.